Greetings all, Joseph Kursky here. Welcome to Community Analyst. This is intended to be for those of you especially that have not used Community Analyst. What is it? What can we do with it? Why would we use it in education? So happy to have you join us today. Not that you need more resources necessarily based on what we were just chatting about in the main room, but this is additional resources for you. I do have lots and lots, thousands and thousands of videos on geo, STEM, education, geography, etc. I also maintain a data book and blog because I'm really passionate about getting students to think about the quality of the data that they're using for their analysis, and also related societal issues, crowdsourcing, copyright, location privacy, and other things. So that spatial reserves blog might be of interest to you. Feel free to connect with me on various social media. I'd love to keep chatting with you all as you move forward in your geospatial journey. Okay, what is Community Analyst? It is the same product as Business Analyst Web. So if you're working with, especially with universities or some people that are interested in teaching with geospatial technology in business, it is the same product as Business Analyst Web. The only difference is the marketing, the title, and a couple of the colors, and some of the menus are different. But other than that, it's the same exact tool. It is a web-based application, so just like ArcGIS Online, no login, no software required. You need to log in to use it, but it's part of that whole ArcGIS platform, which gives you a lot of power, as we'll talk about. You can bring data from Community Analyst into ArcGIS Online, and of course into Pro if you've got it into ArcGIS Online, and vice versa. You've got data in Pro and in ArcGIS Online, you can bring it over into Community Analyst. So it's nice that we've got this platform-enabled set of tools at our fingertips. This is an app. So just like other apps that we've used today and chatted about, we've got this is the way I like to organize. You got field apps, things you go out in the field and collect data with, like Survey 123, for example, we talked about, Explorer, Collector. We've also got office apps, so Esri maps for office. You've got a spreadsheet of data and you want to quickly map it. It's a plug-in to Excel. Business Analyst Web, Community Analyst, that's what we're going to focus on here in this workshop. We also have something called ArcGIS Earth, which wasn't actually mentioned today, but it's kind of like Google Earth meets GIS. So lots of power there, 3D analysis and visualization. ArcGIS Pro is also considered an app. It's partly a desktop app connected to the cloud. And then we've got these community apps as well, such as story maps, web mapping applications, for example. Okay, so Community Analyst, it's, again, a web-based mapping application. Here are the things that really, I think, as educators, we need to pay attention to. It's got a boatload, a flotilla load, an armada load of maps and data inside of it, and also some tools, as you'll see. Choropleth mapping, mapping routes, making drive time or walk time maps, making infographics. There are things that you can do in Community Analyst that you cannot do in any of the other pieces of the platform. So that's something to be noted. Also, just to introduce this, why would we want to teach with it? Again, just like ArcGIS Online, running in a browser, quickly analyze data. Community Analyst was intended to be for people that don't know anything about GIS. They just want to map their data, they want to do some analysis, and they want to be able to share the results of that analysis with others. I think as educators, it's a really compelling set of tools and data sets, as hopefully I'll demonstrate here with you all today. Again, being able to move data back and forth. Here's the key thing about the data. It's not just the demographic data, folks. It's the consumer preference. It's the health data. It's things like who has more than one dog, who has more than one dog and more than one cat, who has multiple dogs and multiple cats, who buys lottery tickets. And I introduced this to the students and I asked them, where did all this data come from? And eventually, some of them come around and say, it's got to be credit card data, right? It's not from the census, and they're exactly right. So we Esri, we actually buy that data from credit card companies. And it's not individual, so you can't tell, if I drink diet iced tea, right? But it's aggregated, block group, zip code, census tract. It's also international, as I'll indicate in a bit. The other thing that's compelling besides all this kind of data is the business data. So if you want to map two kinds of businesses in your community, let's say florists or car washes, something that's kind of spread out versus something that's more clustered like antique malls. It's a different behavior. You go to a car wash, you don't go to one across the street. But antiques, the people that that are into antiquing, right? Let's go across the street and go to that one too. So it's a different behavior and it's a nice way of introducing spatial thinking. Think of it this way, folks. ArcGIS Online is a wonderful tool for mapping. It's not really the ideal tool to do research with. Community Analyst is better actually for research. It's got some mapping capabilities, but not as many as ArcGIS Online. So again, you want to, hopefully that you're getting the sense today, pick the most appropriate tool for the job, right? The most appropriate tool for the job. It might be ArcGIS Online. It might be Pro. It might be Survey 123. It might be Excel, right? It might be ArcGIS Earth. It might be Community Analyst, depending on what you want to teach and when you want to teach it and what level you're pitching this at, okay? So accessing Business Analyst or Community Analyst, you're going to go to communityanalyst.arcgis.com, as you can see in this screen, and you're actually going to do that here in this workshop because we want you to do some hands-on work here, okay? So what can you do with this? Just a snippet, just a bite-sized, gluten-free nugget of geospatial analysis with Community Analyst here in these next few moments, folks. Here's the kinds of things you can do with it. So you can make choropleth maps, what we call in Community Analyst color-coded maps. You see that we're even trying to get rid of some of the geotechnology, geography terms in here. Color-coded choropleth maps. You can map raw numbers. You can map percentages. You can map scale. Or index, you can filter, you can export that into ArcGIS Online. You can do things like map different kinds of data at different scales. Also, you can do what's called a smart map search where you're analyzing 2 or more variables. So for example, I'm looking at maybe in my example in a bit, we're going to look at who has more than 2 dogs and also who owns a vacation home, because maybe I'm thinking about incorporating this into a lesson with my students. I have them think, okay, you want to plan a new pet sitting business. You want to figure out who has multiple dogs and who owns a vacation home, but maybe they're going for multiple weeks and therefore they want to enlist you in your service, and you got to figure out where the best location would be to locate a business like that. And then you can also map your competition in that case. Where are the existing pet sitting businesses, the pet kennels around? So that's the kind of thing that you can do. And the infographics like this are all customizable. So these make you really look like and your students look like a data analyst, a real star, because these really look professional. And you can modify these. So let's say in the upper right, you didn't want that education widget there with educational variables. You can sub that out for an image. You can sub that out for a different kind of a variable, a different kind of chart, a different kind of, even a live interactive web map. Ooh, let me show you another example. Right here, look at these infographics. Again, these are templates that you can use out of the box and just modify for your own data. Ooh, so again, they're very compelling, and it's while some of the infographics are available in other ArcGIS tools, they're really easy to do in Community Analyst, okay? So that is what I had to say on the overview. Let me draw your attention to the workbook. So if you've got that workbook pulled up, I'd like you to go to page 80 and just review. We're not going to spend time as a group here today talking through these questions, but these are the questions that we pose to you. And from where do you access it? Remember, it's communityanalyst.arcgis.com. What is it good for? Hopefully you're getting a sense for why it's useful in education. Data, tools, quick analysis, infographics, etc. And so think about, as we go through here, when would you use this with your own students? When would you use this in a professional development opportunity? Okay, very nice. Now I'd like to draw your attention to this short demo that I'd like to do here. So I've logged into Community Analyst, communityanalyst.arcgis.com. And you can see here that I've got a menu. And also, right now, I'm logged in from the USA. Not all of you are, but you've got the capability here of accessing other countries' data. Now, you're not going to be able to get consumer preference or how do they commute to work for North Korea, okay? So it depends on the country, but there's a boatload of data for many countries. I've taught with this same tool in Germany back in February, in Australia a couple of years ago, and so there's no shortage of data because we're actively curating it and buying it from different sources, national statistics agencies, etc. Okay, so recognize that it's more than just the USA. So I'm going to create maps. So I've got, create maps, color-coded map. What I want to do is, and folks, this to me, it's like the Amazon experience. So I'm going to log in with my T3G credentials. And you're going to get an opportunity to do this in our hands-on session here in a moment. But let's say I want to make a quick map. So I go to Maps, and I am going to start with, okay, Maps. Great. Ooh, let's get rid of some of these help boxes. Okay, Maps, Create maps, color-coded map. What if I wanted, look at I've got these categories on the left side I can pick from, but if I already know what I want, I can type in median age here. And then I'm going to go scrolling down, and you can see I've got median age 2010. I've also got median age down in here. Let's take median age in the 1990s. I've got this create maps, color-coded maps. You can see where I'm going here. Median age. Okay, so how do we sort through this? We want just median age of the entire population. So we've got a whole mountain load of things to pick from. But in the interest of time, let's close that out and go to median age down in here. Okay, so median age 2010 U.S. Census, last decennial census. I've got a number and with the raw numbers, but I also have an index. So if I pick this, it goes into this sort of like a shopping basket. It's just like Amazon. It's almost as easy as that. So now I can see patterns, relationships, and trends. I didn't know that in 2010, the median age for Montana, Maine, and Florida were a bit older than Utah and Texas. Why is that? So this could be a good part of your cultural geography lesson, talking about immigration and talking about number of kids per average family, etc. Another thing that I like about this is if I use the filter on the left side. Remember, this is an index. So for older students, you might talk about what is the mean for the country. The mean is 100 here. So if I filter it, I'm only getting the states now that are above the median for the median age. Does that make sense? So now I've got, oh, these are above the national average, basically, for median age. Why do we see the patterns that we do? Fascinating. And so you can filter any variable like that, okay? Another thing that I wanted to show you ever so briefly was multiple variables. So here I've got this scenario that I laid out a few moments ago. I want to find the best location for my pet sitting business. So I've got household, 2 or more dogs, and I've got own a vacation home. So now I've got this little slider bar that, once again, I can pick, or I can use the slider bars. Okay, so then I can figure out what areas have both multiple dogs and own a vacation home above the national average. The third thing I wanted to demonstrate is mapping businesses, and this is what you're actually going to do in the hands-on exercise. Right now, what I've done is I've created maps, and I've done a business and facilities search. And when I do a business and facilities search, what I mapped was Allsup's convenience stores. And you can see here, I've got it, see this cluster points on the left-hand side? So each one of these numbers means that right around this location in West Texas, there are 39 Allsup's. It's a regional convenience store. Look at this beautiful pattern. Speaking of patterns, relationships, and trends. So it's West Texas, New Mexico. One of the questions I have in the lesson that I'm going to share with you at the end of this lesson is, where do you think, you student, where do you predict the headquarters of Allsup's will be? If you think that the headquarters is in a certain location and Allsup's spread around the headquarters. So hopefully they'll say, oh, it's got to be around Clovis, New Mexico, or Lubbock, Texas, right? Because there's so many Allsup's in those locations, and they're exactly right. It's actually in Clovis, New Mexico. And then what I have you do in the exercise is I have you map the Casey's, C-A-S-E-Y''S, convenience stores. And it's another beautiful cluster, almost an oval shape. And the neat thing about it is that they don't overlap each other's sales territories. Allsup's is over here, and then Casey's is over there. And then I ask the students, well, name a national convenience store. And then they talk about Circle K, 7-Eleven, etc. And then we talk about, when does a chain go regional and when does a chain go national? And we look at, of course, population and so on. There's a certain pattern to locations of businesses in this case. So you can map business locations. And then the last thing that you might have a chance to do in the hands-on exercise is you might have a chance to do this. So I have you zoom into Columbia, Missouri, and then you create a little drive time map. As you can see here in Columbia, this is a 1, 3, and a 5-minute drive time. So I have the students think spatially about, what is the willingness of people to drive X distance or go X minutes to a certain business. So I have them think about IKEA, only major cities, right? You're going to be willing to drive several hours maybe to an IKEA, but not for a convenience store, right? You're not willing to drive an hour to a convenience store. Why is that? So different thresholds, different ways of thinking spatially. And also, if for those of you that are teaching, upper elementary, upper primary, middle school, even there, you can say, okay, why is this not a circle? Why is this drive time or this minutes time not a circle? And then hopefully they'll start thinking, well, you know, busy streets and the number of lanes and the number of traffic lights. So you see this sort of spidery pattern, right? Along I-70 in Columbia, for example, you can get a lot farther in 5 minutes than you can along the city streets, okay? So that is a couple of things that you can do. I'm not even touching the infographics inside Community Analyst. So it's a different look and feel than ArcGIS Online in some ways, but remember, you can bring data back and forth from ArcGIS Online to Community Analyst and back and forth, okay? So that said, I'd like to draw your attention to the workbook, and the workbook on page 81, right here. This is the questions that I am posing to you. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes here. I'm going to have you go into Community Analyst. I'm going to have you map the Casey's general stores and pick only the general stores, because there's other things named Casey's. Casey's Lumberyard, Casey's law offices, right? Only map the Casey's convenience stores. And zoom out to the whole US so you can see the pattern. Then go into your own community. Then, if you have time, make one map of some variable of interest to you. Median age, health, amount of granola people eat. I mean, you'll get into the data, I think, being data geeks yourselves. And then we'll regroup. Okay, I'm going to let you go do that, and I'll bring you back in about 10 minutes or so. We'll have a recap and a discussion. Any questions so far? Put them in the chat box, folks. Thanks so much. All right, folks, I'm going to just give you a 1-minute warning here. As I do that, we're going to just summarize a couple of things, and then we're going to have a short discussion. But just to demonstrate something I think that's actually fairly simple and fairly powerful, and that is the following. So as you probably are aware, there's this classic problem in geography, the modifiable aerial unit problem, where you've got different sizes of areas, but you're mapping the same data set. So for example, in the US, we've got these massively disproportionate sized counties, right? Big ones in Arizona and California, little ones in Texas and Illinois. And we also have different populations. So whatever you're mapping in those things, I think is it's affected by the total population. So if you're mapping anything, median age or total number of kids, total number of Native Americans, total number of houses, et cetera. Los Angeles County, Cook County, Illinois, Harris County, Texas, they're always going to be inflated because of the sheer size of those places. So the point is that you can use Community Analyst to do some pretty powerful things, even on a very simple level. Now, remember what Laura and Charlie and others have been talking about all day. Keep it simple, start simple. There's a lot to Community Analyst, and give yourself time to sink it in. However, I think that even the following would be a good starting point. So for example, let's say you've got a data set that you're mapping. Let's go back into this. And you want to map something like the amount of times that people exercise, okay? So let's review. I'm going to start a new project or open an existing project, and I'm going to create maps, a color-coded map, and I'm going to search on exercise, okay? Great, I'm going to scroll down, exercise at home 2 or more times a week. Okay, so that's great. Let's do that. Let's keep it simple and map by state. So right now, I've got a couple of ways to map it. I can map the raw numbers, and again, as I was mentioning, Texas, California, Florida, New York, they've got a lot of population. So sure, a lot of people are going to be exercising. But if I go to index, this is going to show me, again, related to the national average. So now I can see Utah, Colorado, the upper Great Plains, some East Coast places. They're according to this data set. We always have to say, according to this data set, and we can dig into the metadata. According to this data set, they exercise more than other people around the country. Why is that? Does it have something to do with age? Does it have something to do with lifestyle, et cetera? Okay, so even that alone would be powerful. The other thing that would be powerful is map 2 different kinds of businesses in your community. So here I'm in Metro Denver, and I can see that if I map bail bonds and antiques, we have a couple of districts where we have a lot of antique dealers. South Broadway in Denver for one of them, and you probably have one of those in your community. We also have one in Northwest Denver. So these are clustered, so I can see there's 15 antique dealers and 29 in this sort of South Central Denver. So where are the in your city for certain kinds of things? Interesting. And why do certain businesses cluster and other businesses are more spread out? Car washes, for example, versus antiques. Fascinating. Okay, so questions, comments from you all, or all y'all, you ustedes, vous. How are you folks doing? What do you think of this? You're probably exploring, right? And you don't want me to interrupt you. But if you've got some comments, I'd love to hear those.
Fran has her hand up.
Audio?
You can do audio if you want. If we can keep it manageable, sure. Why not?
Joseph.
Hi.
Hi, it's Fran. So I was able to bring this is fascinating. Thank you so much. My God, I could have never gotten this far without you. Thank you. I got my project into ArcGIS Online and went to content. Which is the best map, product to open? Web mapping application. If I go to web map application, it just lets me share, so I can't really open that.
Well, so you mean you brought some Community Analyst data into ArcGIS Online, and now you're saying, do I show it as a web map or a web mapping application?
Well, I mean, that's
Yeah.
my comfort zone over there.
Uh-huh.
So, well,
Well,
yeah.
we can chat more after this, but
Oh, okay.
I think it depends on what exactly you want. If you want to have your end user be able to manipulate it, then a web map is better, because then they could actually do something with it and save it in their own account. If you want to have them as a sort of a final product that you are specifying the experience that they're going to have, then a web mapping application is the way to go. But anyway, good question. And folks, again, this kind of thing, you would have had to go to census.gov, and not too many years ago, before Community Analyst was there, and then and all these databases at your local, academic library or public library, and bring all this stuff together, and they have this at your fingertips.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
but you take it into ArcGIS Online, Lauren, and bring it in. And I check with our product team saying, there's a lot of data that we've actually purchased here in a Community Analyst. Are you sure it's okay for us to bring it over into ArcGIS Online? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
That
it is
was
amazing. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And again, keep it simple, folks. Just map raw numbers versus percentages or index, and have the students think about patterns, relationships, and trends.
Yeah.
Now, last thing to bring up to you all is if you want the full lesson, it is in the zip file that you downloaded. It's right here in the in that big zip file that you unpacked. So I've got this examining the spatial distribution of national and regional convenience stores. So this walks you through step by step what I sort of touched on. Okay, we're going to start with a map. You map the KCs, which is Iowa, Missouri, et cetera. The ALSEPs down in Texas, New Mexico. You draw a line around it so they can see these different zones. Hopefully you're seeing this on your screen. You look at population, total population, why are the stores located where they are. You do a little filtering. We just talked about that. Bought something at a convenience store, lottery tickets. So that's a key income source for convenience stores. And then you do a little filtering. Then you zoom into Columbia, Missouri, as you can see here. And then you create those little drive times, 1, 3, and 5 minute drive times for Columbia, these rings. Okay, and then you make an infographic. Done. So the point is that you've got some things to do inside Community Analyst. And if you were wondering, well, where do I start? Start with this lesson. Great way to start. All right, we've got about 1 minute. Perfect timing, folks. Thanks. I know that was brief, but any other questions, comments, issues, reactions? Geography ties rule. I go to a lot of educational conferences where these things are being sold. So NSTA, NCGE, et cetera. So very cool. Yes, absolutely. Consumer preference and that sort of thing, voting behavior, there's just no shortage. But again, think about your own lessons and what physically you can actually fit into, and what would enhance what you're teaching. There's just not enough time to do it all. So again, use the most appropriate tools for the job. I think Community Analyst is very appropriate for many things. All right, Roger is reminding us that it is time for us to go back to the main room. And so we will see you back in the main room. I hope that was helpful, folks. Thanks for being with us.